What's up, guys? Brad here. So Mohnish Pabrai's 13F filing was released this morning. So we can see his latest portfolio positions, and wow, guys, we have a massive sell-off. So in the first quarter of 2020, he sold 92% of his Fiat Chrysler position, okay? He sold all of his GrafTech position. Now, the only thing he's holding in his U.S. portfolio is Micron, okay? Now, I want to speculate a little bit about why these portfolio changes happened in the first quarter of 2020. So, Fiat Chrysler, Sergio Marchionne, the CEO of Fiat Chrysler, I think it was like 2 years ago, he passed away. Now, Sergio was a big part of why Pabrai owned Fiat Chrysler. He said recently he should have sold when Sergio passed away. But of course, now we have a situation where it seems likely that we're heading into an extended recession, okay? Now, auto companies, they fare terribly in recessions. And, the reason for that is people don't buy new cars, right? People don't buy new cars in a recession. People really tighten up their spending. They just, service their used cars. They keep those running for as long as possible. And they don't spend the premium on buying new cars. So, Fiat Chrysler, it's a bleak outlook. I think Mohnish Pabrai, for the next couple of years, sees a pretty bleak outlook for Fiat Chrysler. So he got out. It says he sold 92%. I think it's probably just because he hadn't sold his entire position by the end of March, and that he's probably completely sold out now. If I had to guess, I would strongly believe that he is sold out by now. Micron, I tend to think Micron is probably one of those companies that he bought last year that he sees as a hidden moat compounder. I think he was talking about how he bought 3 of those last year and 1 of those this year. I think Micron is probably one of those hidden moat compounders that he bought last year. I was really hoping the one that he bought this year, in the first quarter of 2020, that it was a U.S. company. It seems like it probably wasn't, unless he got into it in early April. But my sense is that it was probably an Indian company that he bought this year that was that hidden moat compounder that he's been talking about. And then Graphtec, I haven't dove into Graphtec recently. I'm going to do that probably in the next week or two, and I'll share my thoughts on Graphtec with you guys about why he sold out of that position. But I think possibly he sold out because he was just finding a better opportunities in India. I know of 4 holdings that he has in India. Edelweiss Financial is down 74% in the first quarter of 2020. From its high to its low, it dropped 74%. Now, by comparison, GrafTech dropped 52%. Okay, so there could just be a situation of opportunity cost here. It's possible that because Edelweiss or one of his other Indian holdings dropped a lot more than GrafTech, it doesn't necessarily mean that GrafTech, the prospects of GrafTech weakened. It could just be that because his Indian holdings dropped by so much more than GrafTech, there was the opportunity cost of holding GrafTech as opposed to liquidating and plowing more money into one of these Indian holdings. It was just a better deal for him to get out of GrafTech and into plow more money into one of his Indian holdings. Edelweiss down 74% in the first quarter. Rain Industries down 63%. Suntech Realty was down 60% from peak to trough in the first quarter. And Kolte Patil Development Company was down 59%. So those are really big moves in his Indian holdings as compared to GrafTech. So, one of two things. Either the opportunity cost was just too high for him to hold GrafTech with all of these bargains happening in India, or, you know, because of the current situation, because of what's happening with this global pandemic, the future prospects for GrafTech were such that it was no longer a compelling investment choice for Pabrai. So I'm going to be digging into that to try to tease those two apart. Was it the opportunity cost, or is there some flawed aspect of GrafTech's business because of the current developments? And that was the reason Pabrai got out. And hopefully he'll talk on this in his next guest lectures at business schools when he releases those on YouTube, which he does, you know, 3 times a year or so. And then lastly, I looked just to see, you know, the S&P 500, what the drop was in the first quarter there versus the Indian stock market, the Nifty 50. What was the drop there? And, you know, it wasn't too different. S&P 500 from peak to trough in the first quarter dropped 34%. And the Nifty 50 in India dropped 38%. So a 4% difference there. Not too substantial. But as I mentioned, GrafTech 52%, Edelweiss Financial 74%. That's a massive difference in the amount of drop from peak to trough. So I just wanted to give you guys this breaking update from Mohnish Pabrai. His latest portfolio, big time sell-off. He sold off, obviously, GrafTech and Fiat, 2 of his 3 positions in the U.S. He basically has liquidated in the first quarter of 2020. So that's massive news. That's all I got, guys. Let me know what you think of Mohnish selling off these 2 U.S. positions. And do you think it's because he's finding better opportunities in India, or do you think it's because, you know, with the current developments, he just no longer likes these companies, Fiat and GrafTech in the U.S.? Curious to hear what you think about that. All right, guys, thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.